etc. Right? There's no reason why we should be narrowing our horizons in this manner, right? Especially when we pride ourselves on being an encyclopedia that everyone can edit, on being an encyclopedia that's crowdsourced and open source to everybody, right? I seriously think, I think that by constraining our definition or our idea of reliable sources to the printed word, right, to certain kinds of information and excluding others, we're not only limiting the growth of Wikipedia as a whole, we also aren't able to provide perspective, right? We're affecting neutrality, and which is why I think we need to relook at the policy of reliable sources.
Yes. Manish, just my name is Shiju Alex. I mainly contribute to Malayalam Wikipedia and its projects. Manish already spoken from English Wikipedia's perspective and how English Wikipedia is treating reliable sources, how they are asking for reliable sources for various articles. But when you come to English, Indian language Wikipedias, one of the main issue we are facing is many of our knowledge are not yet documented. We have a lot of topics that is not yet documented. So when some people ask for reliable sources for some rare topics, it is very difficult for us to show any printed material or some web material to show that. So, but Wikipedia always insists on reliable sources for all the articles or all the facts we write in Wikipedia. So how can we solve that issue? So what we have done is, from our part is, with the help of Achal and some Malayalam Wikipedians and Hindi Wikipedians, we have started a project about oral citations. So what we have done is, for each specific topic, we went to some of the subject aspects. I will just explain with this particular article. This is about a special type of dance form that is performed only in North Kerala. This particular dance form is never documented in any form, either in books or in website or in audio video format. So what we done is, by speaking to people who are performing this dance form, we could collect all the information that is required for a Wikipedia article. So using that information, we created a Wikipedia article, but Wikipedia still requires reliable sources as references. So from our part, what we have done is, we are trying an alternate source of reliable source. What we have done is, we interviewed few people who are actually performing these type of art forms and get the data from all the required data for this article from them. And what we have done is, we have added that as references to this particular for this particular article. And once we added that article to Commons, we provided the transcript both in Malayalam, since that is the base language, and we translated that to English also, so that it can be reused in other languages. So in this way, what we have done is, the data in this particular transcript, now it is available in Malayalam and English. Now, since it is available, now it's available in English, it can be instantly translated to other languages. So we have a source of information from the people who are performing it. Now Achal will talk more about the project that we have done and what are the results that we are expecting. But from Malayalam Wikipedia's perspective, we are still talking with the community, and how of course there are some positive and negatives about this type of alternate resources. So we have to find out, and we need to overcome remove all that negative things, and find a good process for using this type of oral citations for Wikipedia.
I'm the last speaker to go, after which we'll have a discussion. About 1 year ago, a group of us got together to try and see how we could find a way to represent aspects of our lives better on Wikipedia, much in the same spirit as Sridhar's presentation right at the outset of this session today. What we discovered fairly quickly was that aspects that are commonplace and everyday things that we do, which are not connected to magic and history, but instead connected to very mundane things like how we live and what we eat, and what we do for fun are not necessarily documented in books in the same way as they would be if they were happening in a location in Europe or North America or Japan. We started up a project on looking at how we could create alternative citations. We call them oral citations. And the reason we thought that they should be audio interviews is that they're really easy and cheap to create on even the most basic cell phone today, easy to upload on Wikimedia Commons, and therefore easy to use as a reference. The project has an extensively documented research page which is on Meta, which is a space in the Wikimedia movement where people talk about projects on Wikipedia. So it's a sort of office space. It's a working space in the Wikimedia movement. This is that page. If any of you are interested in going into it in more detail, I can send you the link. You can also search for oral citations Wikipedia and you'll be led here. The documentation is fairly simple. The statistics for books are really kind of strange. So in the UK, as of last year, one book is produced per 370 people. In South Africa, one book is produced per about 8,000 people. In India, one book is produced per about 12,000 people. So the quantity of books being produced in a country doesn't necessarily mean that every single book being produced in India is about some aspect of India. If John Grisham is reprinted in India, that counts as an Indian published book. So these statistics themselves are actually a little deceptive because there's probably less that documents things that happen within India, and obviously there are a lot of books published outside the country that are related to things that happen within India. But essentially, we're faced with a situation where not only is the production of books today far, far lower than it is in many other countries in the world per capita, but also that what we face is something of a 400-year lag in terms of the production of books. Germany and countries which are in the region of the original region of the invention of the printing press, for instance, have something like a 400-year-old head start of publishing, which creates a very interesting scenario that makes it rather difficult to catch up. I'm all for more books being published, and all of us are for having that happen. But the idea of having that happen in a way that can catch up somehow with documenting as much as has been in European books is probably a bit of a pipe dream. And that partly makes us turn to something like Wikipedia, which is a space in which we can compete in and engage equally, a space that has the potential to allow different kinds of people, regardless of how their knowledge is documented, to talk to each other on an equal footing. So this research page contains a lot of the thought process that went into the project, what happened in there, and what the results of it were. During the course of it, we made a film. The film, we called it People Are Knowledge. It's up on Vimeo, the video sharing site. It's also up on Wikimedia Commons. If you search for People Are Knowledge and Wikipedia, you'll be led to this film. It's only 45 minutes long. I think it's worth watching. I wish we could show it to you, or we had the time to, or we had the infrastructure to, because we don't have any of that, so we can't. But when you go back, if you're interested in this, please look at it. It's actually worth watching, and it's just a video summary of a long research project that we did and are continuing to work upon in different ways. One of the really nice things that came out of it is that we worked across South Africa and India. We worked in a language called Northern Sotho in South Africa and in Malayalam and Hindi in India. And what we produced are a bunch of different articles like Shiju showed you earlier, which are based upon oral citations and contain audio interviews as their citation rather than print. In some cases, they contain a combination of some printed sources and some audio sources. But the idea is to use audio and to use conversational knowledge where we can to supplement the lack of the existence of something we know very well in any printed form. This project concluded a couple of months ago, and we've since been moving on to think of the kinds of issues that Sridhar and Manish brought up earlier in discussions today, which is to say, it's by now fairly well established as to what Wikipedia does well. Wikipedia does printed knowledge pretty well, more excellently than anything has ever done it, perhaps, before. The achievements that Wikipedia and the Wikimedia movement and the projects that lie within it have created so far are significant. There is just no question about that whatsoever. But I think it's also undeniable that they work for particular regions of the world and particular systems of life and history much better than for others. And if the movement is to be truly global, if we are to think about it seriously as people who live in India or in South Africa or in other parts of the developing world, then there is something interesting that we can bring to it too. And in the long run, it's not like social, conversational knowledge is purely a feature of developing countries. So as many books as there can be produced in the Netherlands or in Germany, there are still stories that are left out. There are still facets of information that remain conversational even in these countries. There is folk knowledge that exists all over the world. One of the interesting aspects of working on this is looking at how the world of social media today, looking at how Twitter and Facebook to a certain extent, but more importantly, new initiatives like Quora, which was started a couple of years ago by a group of people who left Facebook. Quora is a question and answer site that is meant to function in some combination of an aggregator, some very light version of Wikipedia, and answers.com. What it does, though, is it's a social network for question and answers. What it allows is an extremely liberal interpretation of what is considered a good source. What it means is that it doesn't necessarily work all the time, but when it works, it's pretty interesting. And the curious thing about all of this is that there is something that connects the 60-year-old person who, in Shiju's earlier slides, was talking to us about Niliyar Bhagavati, which was a Theyyam ritual conducted in a tiny village a little outside Kannur in northern Kerala, who was telling us about this ritual because it wasn't written down in any book that we know of. And there is something that connects him and a 15-year-old child today who's grown up in Tokyo or San Francisco or Hamburg, who has never not known the internet. And so this idea of the person who grows up and who reads books and goes to libraries is something that's changing. In an atmosphere where you grow up never not knowing the internet, quite often your entire universe of knowledge is the internet. You have figured out on the internet who you trust, who you don't, where to get what you want from, and oftentimes never have to leave the internet. One of the things that unfortunately Wikipedia is at the moment bad at doing is embedding itself within that internet, right? And so the kind of conversational knowledge that a rich 15-year-old child gets and is conversant with in San Francisco is oddly and kind of wonderfully the same as the conversational knowledge that the 60-year-old priest in the village outside Kannur is familiar with. And neither of them have adequate space to be represented and captured and used as reliable sources on Wikipedia. We think it's a tremendous opportunity, and we're trying to find ways that we can connect other people who have interesting ideas about sources. There's no reason, for instance, why Sridhar's videos of personal testimonies by different people cannot be used as sources that connect as reliable references to the Wikipedia articles on these people, or be used as a basis to create new Wikipedia articles. There's no reason why the YouTube channel that my friend's father runs on South Indian cooking cannot be a good resource for South Indian recipes that are very often household forms. They were not designed to appear in recipe books, and as a result, a lot of the food that you see in South India and North India and elsewhere, you're not going to get in any restaurant. You'll only get it in a home. It's not going to be in a book, but it's on a YouTube channel. Is that a reliable reference? We think it could be. We think there are ways that all of us find systems of trust that we can identify with, and there's no reason why we can't transfer that to Wikipedia and make this something that all of us can identify with a little more interestingly than we can today. Thank you very much.
That's what it's right now put in. I'm not put it in the Wikipedia Commons yet because I just came to know that it can possibly. And I don't know on Wikipedia Commons yet how long can the videos be. I yet don't know about that. I think this can.
Well, the question is on which license. It is copyrighted, it is free license.
No, license usually what happens like, I mean, since it's a project which has been initiated by my company, the Hamsafar Trust, so we own all the copyrights of that particular video completely. And we have consent from the people who have given the interviews that is a completely open source. It can be distributed free completely everywhere.
Should may I further Tim's question? I think what he's asking is whether you have explicitly licensed them as with a Creative Commons license, under what conditions? And to the extent that you do that, then they can be uploaded on a place like Wikimedia Commons. Though the file size limit is unfortunately very small, and I have to say that I think Wikimedia video is really fairly bad and not necessarily very user friendly. But I do think, Tim, that regardless of the license, because we link as references to all kinds of traditionally copyrighted sources in print, whether a New York Times article or otherwise, right? So to that extent, we should be able to link as well to closed source, totally copyrighted video or audio as well.
In fact, one of the things which I'm waiting to really kind of work on this whole Connect project board on Wikimedia is also like we are going to come out with a book of all the transcripts. So we are going back to the traditional mode of that, like as a printed book of the transcripts, and immediately, yes, it could be accepted as a way. But what you talked about was interesting, that you are using audio and video.
English Wikipedia is very strict about using reliable resources. Till now they have not considered about using oral citations for English Wikipedia. But in language Wikipedias we are trying and we are discussing among ourselves, because when we do this type of new type of references, there are some challenges that we need to be addressed, because there is a case of people misusing this also. So we need to see how we can misusing means one thing is ignorant.
Yeah, so for instance, if you were to use a blog is currently not a reliable source, or an interview or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's not blog.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you use the mic there?
Did you say blog is rightly not a reliable?
Okay, no, I said blog as of now is currently is not a reliable source on Wikipedia. So yeah, from the Wikipedia perspective, right? Now, one of the reasons why this is ostensibly not allowed is because anybody can create a blog and anybody can put up any information from any person, and you will find a lot of such blogs which are like which run to an agenda, right, to further an agenda and stuff like that, right? The solution, of course, is to be able to filter out certain kinds of undesirable information through community discussions, right? The procedure already exists for books. Like anybody can write a book about anything, publish an article about anything. If somebody has a doubt, you can challenge it on a note.